Joining us now, former senior campaign advisor to former President Trump in 2020 and his campaign manager in 2016, Corey Lewandowski. And also with us today, Mercedes Schlapp, senior fellow at the American Conservative Union and former White House strategic senior advisor. Great to see you both this Friday. Welcome in.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this Hatch Act answer, as James was very astute in pointing out, as a way of deflecting. Spinner's going to spin, obviously. But what do you make of that, and also where the investigation stands and the hope for transparency? First to you, Corey.
Well, look, knows this. The entrance that they're discussing is really a secured entrance. It's the entrance that the cabinet members come into when they're visiting the White House. There's an armed guard that sits right inside that entrance. The Situation Room is immediately to the right. And once you take the left, that is the back stairs up to the second floor, which gets you up to the inner sanctum, almost right into the Oval Office. So this is a secured area. And the notion that they can't discuss the fact that this isn't either Hunter Biden's cocaine or Joe Biden's cocaine because it's a potential Hatch Act violation is absolutely absurd. This has nothing to do with the campaign. And the truth is, Mr. Bates doesn't want to talk about it because he probably believes that it is Hunter's cocaine and doesn't want to be on record as denying that.
Yeah, Mercedes, obviously this new location discovery, heavily trafficked, seemed to be a little less heavily trafficked with this more of an executive entrance to the West Wing.
Well, I got to tell you, Bianca, I think what's so problematic is that the White House, I mean, it's a White House in chaos. Their press team, their communications team, they're giving mixed messages out there. You're seeing these White House sources giving reporters a certain set of facts, and then all of a sudden the facts change. I mean, they had mentioned that it was in one area of the White House, and then now we find out it's in the west exact entrance. And so this is, I think, a challenge for the White House. And so you could tell with Andrew Bates, he was very nervous in answering that question. And in essence, I think you've seen a big problem with Andrew Bates because he's not answering the question directly. The reporter basically made it clear, is it Biden's? Is it Hunter Biden's? And he would obviously ended up attacking Donald Trump and saying that there was these different policy contrasts, which, you know, again, raises the question of he's saying, well, I don't want to violate the Hatch Act, but he could have violated the Hatch Act.
So, you know, obviously we're going to watch and see what the Secret Service, you know, comes back with. We know, obviously, this is a story that will continue to be followed closely. Let's pivot a little and talk about the campaign trail. Trump is in Iowa today. We took a live look there, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was on Newsmax yesterday talking about his stance on border security. Let's play a little bit of his interview where he spoke about Trump's border wall.
We're going to have rules of engagement on that border. If the cartels are cutting through our border wall to try to move product, that's going to be the last thing they do because they're going to end up stone cold dead. We are going to use force at the border to be able to defend the American people.
This obviously a veiled swipe at former President Trump here, and when it comes to the border and the wall.
Bianca, can you hear us?
For him. And so, you know, it's okay for Ron DeSantis to talk about what he wants to do, but he has to do that under the context of what Donald Trump has already done. And we know we have a porous border. We know the policies of the Trump administration were working, but we also know that we have to get a conservative back in the White House because we cannot be the only country in the world that allows people to simply pour across your border without any recourse. No other civilized country allows that. And so we must stop those border crossings from taking place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the border is a major issue there. Had a little bit of trouble with your audio at the beginning there, Corey. But, you know, when it comes to the border and it comes to obviously, you know, fentanyl crossing, it's something a lot of Americans will be looking at. DeSantis also, Mercedes, talked about the fundraising. His campaign's touting $20 million as the new haul here. The campaign says it is the largest from any non-incumbent Republican candidate in more than a decade. Of course, we also know Donald Trump nearly doubled his fundraising during the second quarter of 2023, more than $35 million. You need a war chest, and obviously DeSantis is trying to show his oomph and his strength when it comes to that.
Sure. Look, it's It's a lot of money. They're raising the funds. The reality is, though, when you look at the PAC, for example, they transferred $80 million from his gubernatorial campaign into the PAC. There was one large donor who brought in about $20 million into the PAC. The money's coming in, I think, for both candidates. But the reality is, while the money might be coming in, DeSantis is struggling in his poll numbers. They're really not. He's not gaining the traction that I think a lot of Republican analysts expected. And I think part of it has to deal with the fact that the more that DeSantis criticizes Donald Trump's successful policies, the MAGA Republicans are saying, wait a second, I don't want to go in this direction because he's attacking the one man, President Trump, who has stood up for America First policy, who had basically built a strong nation, who made our country more secure. And so, in essence, I think DeSantis is struggling because he's having a campaign messaging problem, and he needs to revisit that if he wants to gain any sort of traction against Donald Trump.
Well, obviously, the other folks in that wide GOP field, like Tim Scott, who we'll hear from a bit later on the broadcast, still think that they have a lane, and this is, good news for them. Mercedes, Corey, got to leave it there. Wish we had more time, but great analysis today, and it's great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.